Hello everyone, this is Pat's Garage. Just making a video about this 2005 Audi Allroad, which I purchased probably 9 months ago, maybe a year ago. Actually, I think a little over a year ago. So basically, bought this thing with blown air suspension. That was clearly not the only thing wrong with it. The previous owner tried to fix the air suspension with duct tape, and what happened is it rubbed through the duct tape. The adhesive stuck to the inside and outside of the strut. This isn't the one that had the duct tape on it, but you can kind of see how there's a inside and an outside. So there was duct tape right in there. It wore through, stuck to both sides, and it basically yanked the bottom off of the O-ring. This was up front. That's a rear shock. So yeah, basically drove it 200 and something kilometers home with basically no suspension up front. It was on the bump stops on one side and super low air pressure on the other front side because it was almost trying to level itself. Which, yeah. So I got that covered. Basically got it home, did a little bit of work to it. I went away for a little while to the States. So I ended up, not draining the oil for a while. And then basically did a little bit of work to the engine in terms of it was misfiring and there was a bunch of oil leaks into, well, basically every coil pack had some oil in it, or basically every spark plug well. So ended up doing valve cover gaskets, half moon seals in the back of the engine on that side, basically passenger side. And then after that, drove it around for maybe 10 kilometers and then drained the oil. So yeah, and then realized it was filled with metal. It looked like copper, and after looking at all the bearings, there's no copper in these bearings. So it didn't come from main bearings or rod bearings. There is some wear on them. They're a little dirty right now, but let's see. So yeah, you can see just a little bit of wear. It's not crazy bad. And then there's the full-faced. All right, anyways. So, ended up just taking the entire motor apart. I have replaced main bearings, rod bearings, the bolts. You can't, basically the factory bolts for the engine are extremely expensive. So it was going to be $900 for OEM bolts, and I could only find one length, and this is a BEL block. So for the main bolts, it has two different lengths for the inside and outside. I think the inside one is longer than the outside one. I think that's how I remember it going. Even though the outside one sits slightly higher, I tried them both ways, and if you put this one on the outside, it was way higher. So, yeah. Basically, there is a few clearance issues that you will run into if you go with, basically go with this style of main stud. Either you can grind down these rearmost main studs, and all of them. You need to grind down this one and this one, all four of them that are sitting in the back, or you need to remove some material from the pump. So it's actually quite a bit that I had to take off. It's almost, I don't want to take it out of the bag, but it is almost through that little support over there and over here too, but you can't really see. All right, let's see. I'll take it out of the bag. So it is quite a bit of material you have to take off. That port connects to the front cover. Let me just cover this back up. Okay. So basically, new oil pump. One thing I will mention is I ended up checking all of the rod bearing clearances and main bearing clearances. One other thing is not only did I check them, I also used a dial bore gauge to check the clearances of all the main bearing bores, because when you change bolts, it can often end up causing some squish and it won't be perfectly round anymore. But they were all consistent and they stayed the same with different bolts. So I'm not concerned about any sort of weird warping or anything like that. And same goes for the rod bearings. So all of the bearing specs in the bottom end, basically all of them were 1.5 thousandths for the mains and the rod bearing clearance. Only one that was a little tight, or like a little tighter, was this one was around 1/1000th of an inch, which Germans, you know how German motors are, BMWs are occasionally known for blowing up once in a while, very rare, mainly their S motors. Well, when I was looking at the bearing specs, they're okay with 0.75 of a thousandths of a clearance for this, for the rod bearing clearance, which is tiny, and yeah, it seems strange. Like, this journal's fairly big. I'm guessing it's a 2-inch journal, so you'd expect around a 2/1000 clearance. And normally you increase the clearance when it's a boosted engine over a naturally aspirated engine. But yeah, it just seems weird to me that they would be okay with a clearance that tight. Maybe they say it's okay, but they're never actually at that clearance, because who knows? Like, with BMW V10s, they're known for basically damaging the bearings, and if you get aftermarket bearings for them, they have a much wider clearance. It's basically double, and yeah, like the V10s are known for having rod bearing issues, and these bearings are basically the solution for it. So I don't know, but Germans seem to like clearances on the tight side of things. But the other thing is the end play. That clearance didn't seem super tight. They want 3.5 thousandths of end play. I got it. It's around 4.5 thousandths. Originally it was 2.5, and I had to take off a little bit of material from the back side of the bearing to just bring the clearance down just slightly. So basically, I did that all by hand, not using one of those. But yeah, basically, that's everything there. I've covered the oil pump. What's going on with this car is not only am I rebuilding the engine, I'm doing a manual swap. So it came with a 5 HP 19 FLA, I think, is the transmission code. And basically, there's a website online called Audis for Parts, and they basically sold me the swap kit. Basically came with everything I need except for a drive shaft, and they're sending me a spacer, as well as a set of heads because I made a mistake. But that is another story. So yeah, basically everything's covered there, I think. I need to install the oil pump next and then do the lower covers. So everything's been cleaned. That's been masked off. It has new chains going on, so I don't have a new sprocket. I wasn't able to find one. Maybe I need to contact the dealer to find one. But basically, new chain, old sprockets. What can you do? But I talked to a couple engine builders, and they're like, okay, what can you do? If you can't get the sprocket, you can't get the sprocket. So they weren't cringing at the idea. of just replacing a sprocket. Or, you know what I mean. So, that's basically it. Everything's been replaced in the, basically, vent tube area with the oil distribution lines, oil squirters. Everything's been cleaned. Cylinders have been rehoned. Goat's piston rings have been used. And they were all gapped to the correct, or not the correct. It has a little bit of a wider gap. So I made sure to clearance them all using a one of those grinding wheels with the handle. So they're all between 19 and 20 thousandths of an inch. Most of them are around 19. But yeah, that's basically everything there. There's going to be some shifter modifications because basically, they use a plastic ball joint. You can convert it to a spherical bearing. So like a metal bearing that either is Teflon lined or metal on metal. So I'm getting like a Teflon lined one and going to end up converting the shifting mechanism to basically all metal instead of a plastic bushing, which is kind of worn out. The other thing is, this is the slave cylinder, and it's plastic. So the lead screw's plastic. Everything on it is plastic. So I'm assuming there's a metal sleeve inside, but I ended up getting a Dorman unit, which is all metal. So got to do that. I also need to fully rebuild the transmission, and apparently you can't get bearings. There's some bearings that are unobtainium for this transmission. You can replace synchros, the first and second gear, like shift collar. Or I don't know if it's shift collar, that might not be the right. Anyways, I think it is shift collar. And I'm also doing a 4-to-1 diff mod, so more power gets sent to the rear, basically 80% maximum, instead of, I think, 60 rear, 40 front. But I could be wrong. It might just be 50-50. So, yeah, I think that covers all that. I'm also converting it to single turbo. So I need to do a bunch of changes with the wiring because the wiring harness used to run right here, and that's where the turbo sits. So instead, the wiring needs to be ran behind the firewall, most likely. And some of the wires can still come out this side, but it's just going to need to be, harness is going to be need to be kind of disassembled and then basically rewrapped and extend the wires that I need. So I think I've covered all that. You also need to change the axles, a couple things like that. It's going to get all new accessories. It's getting everything it can get, plus some. So instead of the water lines being, regular water lines, they're all going to be converted to AN bungs with, basically I have a brand new set of these fittings. I'll see if I can just weld on the pre-existing ones, but I am slightly concerned about that. I think it'd be better to weld one outside of the car or outside of the engine and then install it. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure on that, and I'll figure that out. But one side's going to be AN6 for the turbo, and then one side's going to be, I think, AN4 for the wastegate, like water cooler. So, or basically the coolant passages in the wastegate. So need to do that on the coolant flange thing. And yeah, the other thing I want to do is try and get rid of every bit of plastic in this cooling system. And that'll involve some welding because the aluminum radiators you can get for these cars, they do not, basically, not only do they not have a transcooler, the places where your normal lines connect, they're the wrong size. So these cars use like a clip design. So it's like a plastic fitting that you clip onto the radiator and slide, not really a C-clip, but a piece of metal wire over, and then it locks it in place. the fitting that you slide this, basically the male part of the fitting, and you're sliding over a female part, that inside metal part's the wrong size. So you need to kind of do some modifications to make it work. And I want to get rid of the plastic part. So here's the part I'm actually talking about. So that part right there. I'm going to see if I can make this out of metal. The part where this sensor's going in. And instead of it having that fitting, either using... There's these fittings that you can use for like... it's almost like a V-band clamp, but for like an intake system for like turbochargers. And I'm pretty sure that can also work for water lines, from my understanding. I just need to double check because it's only under 14 PSI. And I think those flanges are good for over like 150. So it would work perfectly fine. But yeah, it would basically be a quick disconnect, which I got to figure out if that's a good idea or not. But I think I've rambled on for long enough. I got to continue assembling the bottom of the motor. Basically, every seal's getting replaced, valve stem seals, a bunch of stuff's getting coated. 2.8 manifolds, tons of new bushings. I think I've covered it all at this point. You get the idea. But yeah, it is finally coming together. It has taken a long time in terms of parts. But if you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to get back to work. Anyways, bye-bye.